I'm wearing white because I'm in mourning. Hey guys, it's Hannah, and today I'm coming to you with a very long-awaited review and discussion that I'm so excited to be filming, and that is my review for Lord of Shadows by Cassandra Clare. If you didn't know, Lord of Shadows is the second book in the Dark Artifices series, the first book being Lady Midnight, so if you want to hear any of my thoughts on the first book, I have both a spoilery discussion and a non-spoilery discussion of that book, so I'll leave it linked on the screen as well as down below if you'd like to go and watch those videos. So since this is the second book in the trilogy, and there are so many other books in this series to begin with, I can't really go into a non-spoilery discussion of this book, but I can just give you my general thoughts on it, and that's that I actually really enjoyed this book. Lady Midnight was about a 3 to 3.5 star book for me, but this one was a solid 4 stars, and I absolutely loved it. This book really took me back to the way that I felt when I first started reading this series, back when I was like in the 7th grade, and I just discovered these books. Only the first 3 were out, and it was in its beginning stages, and I had just fallen in love with this world. This book really took me back to all of that, and it made me feel all of those things again, so I had such a fantastic time with it. So if you've read the other Shadowhunters novels and you're kind of hesitant about picking up Lady Midnight and Lord of Shadows, I highly recommend it. Even if Lady Midnight wasn't necessarily your favorite one, this one is, in my opinion, infinitely better, and it's definitely worth it. So that's all I can really say for my non-spoilery section of this video, but now we're gonna get into all of the spoilers and all of my thoughts, because I have a lot of questions and theories and things that I want to discuss. So to all of you non-spoilery people, now is the time to click out of this video, go read this series, and come back and discuss it with me, because I'm about to get into all of the spoilers. So go click out of this video now. I don't want to spoil you, because I promise you this one is so much better when you don't know what's going to happen. Alright, so for all of you who are still sticking around, I'm assuming that you've read this book, so now let's just get into discussing it, because I have so many burning questions. Quite honestly, I don't know how to structure this review because there are so many different things that I want to talk about, so I'm not really going to. I'm just going to go through my list of things that I want to discuss and the questions I have and the theories that come to mind, and if it's kind of like out of order, I apologize, but that's the best I can do because just so many things happened. Okay, so starting off, I want to talk about that one scene with Clary when she's talking to Emma, when she and Jace have come to the Institute, and she's having this conversation with Emma, and we finally find out why she said no to Jace when he proposed to her. And she's talking to Emma, and she tells Emma that she's been having these dreams where she knows that she's going to die, and she doesn't want to marry Jace because she knows that if she dies, that would just devastate him, and getting married would make that bond even stronger, and she doesn't want to do that to him, but she's having dreams that she's going to die. So does this mean that Clary is actually going to die? I honestly wouldn't put it past Cassandra Clare because she kills off so many of her other characters, as we will get into later, but I just have so many questions. Like, what are her dreams that she's been having? Like, what is the situation in which she is dying? Like, why is this going to happen to her? Does it have something to do with Sebastian? Does it have something to do with like this imminent war that is definitely coming very soon? Like, she said that she knows she's also gonna die soon, not sometime in the future, so I want to know like what's happening. So yeah, when she said that, I was just like in shock, and I did not see that coming at all, and I have no idea what this means. We don't know when she's going to die. It could be in the next book, it could be in like the next trilogy, who knows? But I have so many questions and I need the answers. Okay, so moving on, the next 2 characters I want to talk about are Julian and Emma, because if you've watched my Lady Midnight reviews, either of them, you probably know that I do not like Julian Blackthorn, and I actually don't ship Julian and Emma, which I know is an extremely unpopular opinion because basically everybody ships the 2 of them. I haven't found another review in which someone has said that they don't ship the 2 of them, so I feel really alone in this, but like, it's my opinion, that's how I feel about them. The thing for me is that I really like Emma, but I just don't like Julian, so I don't like the 2 of them together. I feel like their relationship is just so desperate, and I know that that's like what it's supposed to be because they're in such a terrible situation because they love each other, but they can't be together because it'll quite literally destroy them and their families. And usually I like the angst and the drama that's in all of that, but for whatever reason with the 2 of them, it just doesn't click for me. In this book though, I definitely enjoyed it more than I did in Lady Midnight, and I think that's because the 2 of them kind of communicated a bit more, and also because we got some more plot development in terms of how the parabatai bond is actually affecting them, and also when we find out how it can be broken. That one scene when they're in Malcolm's house in London and the 2 of them are like finally being honest with each other, when Emma tells him that she wasn't actually dating Mark and tells him about the parabatai bond, and he admits to her that when they were in the Seelie court and made the deal with the Seelie Queen to get the Black Book, she promised Julian that she knew a way to break the parabatai curse, but the way that you can break the parabatai curse is by breaking every single parabatai parabatai bond that has ever existed, so no one can ever have a parabatai, and all the parabatai bonds that already exist will like no longer be parabatai. So like Alec and Jace can't be parabatai anymore, and Simon and Clary can't be parabatai anymore, and I just couldn't believe it. And then after that, when Julian was saying that they could use this as leverage with the clave, I literally couldn't deal with it. Emma clearly says we will do anything for each other, but of course there are limits to what we'll do for each other. But Julian is just like, well, you know, we can just use it as leverage. We're not actually going to do it. And Emma's like, we're not actually going to do it. Like, you know that, right? And then Julian's like, yeah, no, definitely. But he clearly would. There is no doubt in my mind that if it came down to it, he would definitely do it, because those are the lengths that he's willing to go to for Emma. And like, this is why I don't like their relationship. It's just like too much for me. And I know that Julian is like supposed to be this way. He's supposed to be like kind of scary. Like Emma says it several times throughout this book, and in Lady Midnight, she directly tells him that he scares her. And I know that he's supposed to be some sort of anti-hero. There's supposed to be some sort of like darkness or something that we're not totally sure of. I mean, he had a really hard, complicated, dark past. He killed his own father. He's gone through a lot in his life, but there's just something else that's there, like lying underneath the surface, that is making him so much more intense than I think he normally would be. And even though I don't like him very much, I'm really curious to know what that is and what is making him this way and making him so desperate. Sometimes I think that it might have something to do with the parabatai curse, but it doesn't really affect Emma in the same way. So I'm really curious to know what it is that makes Julian this intense and this desperate and determined to do whatever it takes to protect his family and those that he cares about. So I think that's why in this book I was actually like a little bit more okay with their relationship. In my opinion, out of every relationship in this book, they are the most boring. But I do really like the fact that the book is exploring how the parabatai bond kind of works a bit more. I just think that's a really cool aspect of like the Shadowhunter world. So I like that they talk about it a lot more in these books. Oh, and also I just remember this one hysterical scene between Julian and Emma. I think this is when they're in Malcolm's house at one point, but they're talking about the different Shadowhunter family mottos, and they name them for like Herondale and Morgenstern and Lightwood and everything, and it's hysterical. Julian goes, the Lightwood family motto is "we mean well," and Emma's like, very funny. And then Julian says, no, really, it actually is. And then Emma replies by saying, seriously? So what's the Herondale family motto? Chiseled but angsty? And I was cracking up because that is honestly so true. And then the Morgenstern one, when in doubt, start a war. The other thing related to Emma that I wanted to talk about was everything that happened with Cortana. In this book, we're introduced to so much more in terms of the world and the magic. So when we meet the Seven Riders, these like fairy god-like people, I really don't even know what they are. And Emma actually uses Cortana to kill one of them, which shouldn't have been possible because they're not supposed to be able to be killed. That was just so crazy. So she killed one of these riders who were not supposed to be able to be killed because Cortana is that powerful. And I'm kind of like confused as to how Cortana has this much power. If I remember correctly, it can absorb like the powers of the things that it like slays, I guess that's how you'd say it. So does that mean that it's absorbed any of the powers of this one rider? Does that make it even more powerful? Obviously, since she actually ended up like destroying the mortal sword at the end too, does that also mean that the sword now has the powers that the mortal sword had as well? Like, I just have so many questions about this sword and how and why it is so powerful. And also this means that the Seven Riders, the Unseelie King, probably the Seelie Queen at this point too, and the Clave are all probably after Emma because of Cortana, or at least like if I were any of these people, I would want Cortana because it seems to be like the most powerful weapon. And I'm just really curious to know now what its limits are because it seems like it can do anything. Okay, so moving on, I actually next want to talk a little bit about the plot before I move on to the rest of the characters, because apart from some of the romances, which were like my favorite thing about this book, the plot was so incredible. Lady Midnight to me added a little bit more to the world of the Shadowhunters, where we got to see some of the corruption of the Clave, and we're getting to see kind of what the cold peace is really like and the way that the Clave and the Shadowhunters are trying to kind of rise to their level of superiority that they once had over the Downworlders. But in this book, that is just explored 1,000 times more, and now we get to see like the actual like politics of this world and how corrupt the Clave truly is. In this book, with the introduction of the Centurions and the Cohort and all of these like hate groups that are developing against Downworlders and trying to register Downworlders, you can see all of the allusions to actual historical events. And I love the fact that the plot now actually has some sort of historical context to it and it reflects actual events and experiences and political movements that we've seen throughout history. Those things obviously fit in perfectly with this fantasy world when we get to see all of the corruption that's going on, but I love that it makes a sort of commentary on actual real world experiences because that's one of my favorite things to see in fantasy. There's one point where they're all discussing the Downworlder registry and Kit just goes, "Am I the only one who's seen X-Men and thinks this is a bad idea?" And I was cracking up. In this one, we specifically get to see how cruel and terrible the Clave can be with the way that they tortured Annabelle when she and Malcolm were together. The fact that they said that she had just become an Iron Sister when her family actually buried her alive is just so heartbreaking to hear. At that council meeting that Kit and Ty and Livy, I believe, all watch when they're in the Shadow Market, and they see these council people talking about how they're going to deal with Annabelle. And Kit realizes that one of the people at that council meeting is a Herondale, and I want to know which Herondale that is. I could probably figure it out if I looked at a family tree and timeline-wise figured it out, but I haven't done that yet. So if any of you know which Herondale that is, please let me know because it's been like bothering me for days. But we get to see the corruption of the Clave in the way that they tortured Annabelle and how cruel they were to her. And we also find out more about how biased and prejudiced the Clave is and Shadowhunters just in general are. When we find out about Diana being transgender, I literally was sobbing because that scene was so beautifully written and so emotional. I loved Diana in the first book, even though she really didn't have much of a role. I knew that she was going to be developed in the later books, so I was really excited to see where her character went. Her and Gwyn are absolutely adorable, and honestly, they're one of my favorite relationships now in any of the Shadowhunter books, like ever. They are just so good and cute. I was in tears when Diana told him everything about how she transitioned and everything that she went through, the fact that she had to live as a mundane for so long and she never thought she'd actually become a Shadowhunter again, the fact that she never got to see her parents when they died, and everything that was just so devastating. He kneels down in front of her and takes her hand and tells her that she's the bravest woman he has ever met. And it was just so beautiful. I was a sobbing mess. He is literally the greatest, and she is also the greatest, and I have so many feelings about them. They're just, oh, they make me so happy. That was truly one of my favorite, if not my favorite scene in the entire book. It's probably my favorite scene in the entire book. I was listening to it on audiobook, so I just like went back and listened to it over and over again, and then when I got the book, I reread the scene as well, because I feel so many things. This video is literally all over the place, but so is my mind, so please just bear with me for a minute. Another little point I wanted to touch on before I forget about this was everything that happened with Drew and Jaime. When Jaime comes and he wants to talk to Christina and he talks to Drew, and the two of them kind of work together to get a meeting with him and Christina, and then the two of them are reunited and it's a really cute scene. But then as like he's leaving, he leaves his duffel bag behind, and Drew finds this little like stone or whatever it was in the bag. I honestly don't remember what it is that she finds, but she finds something in that bag and she holds it, and somehow she is transported to Fairy. And when she's there, she suddenly sees this little boy about like 13 years old with white blonde hair and green eyes, and we have no idea who this is, and I am just so confused. Like, that is never even touched on ever again. Like, once that happens and she comes back from it, they never even discuss it. She never tells anybody what happens, and I'm so curious. But like, who is this mysterious unnamed fairy boy? Like, who is he? I want to know who he is, and I want to know how he's relevant to all of this. The next thing I need to talk about is them all going to the London Institute, because I was in tears the whole time they were there. Clearly, based on my channel name, you all probably know that I love the Infernal Devices series. Clockwork Angel, Clockwork Prince, and Clockwork Princess are three of my favorite books of all time. That is one of my all-time favorite trilogies, and I just have such a deep connection and love for that series. So the London Institute is like my favorite place in terms of like the Shadowhunters world. It's my favorite place out of everywhere they ever go, ever. I love it so much. So when they all went to the London Institute in this book, I just felt so many things, and there were so many little details that were given to us throughout it while they were just exploring it that brought me to tears. When Emma goes into the room that she's staying in and she sees the little marks on the wall where Will and Jem have marked their heights as they were growing, that was the actual cutest thing in the entire world, and I was a sobbing mess. And then we find out that Kit can see Jessamine because her ghost is still in the London Institute, and their conversations back and forth were just so adorable. And then when Jessamine starts talking about how she doesn't really know what happens after you die, some people move on and some people don't, and the fact that Tessa used to ask her about that and ask about what happened to Will, I was sobbing so much. And then she says that he never lingered because he moved on to a better place, and I just, oh my god, Will Herondale is everything to me, and reading that literally shattered me all over again. Like, there weren't as many tears as I had when I read the epilogue of Clockwork Princess, because nothing has ever topped that for me, but there were a lot of tears, let me tell you. And then also when Kit is just like looking through the library and he's finding all of these books with the name William H. just scribbled into them, there were so many little references to Will, and it was all I wanted and more, and it was so good. But yeah, that just had me shattered because I'm such Infernal Devices trash and Will Herondale trash. Like, literally I'm wearing a Herondale ring on my ring finger because I want to be married to Will Herondale. So that was just the greatest, and it was everything, and it made me so happy. Speaking of the Herondales, we have to talk about Kit Herondale, because Kit Herondale is an actual gem. Kit is just such a joy to have throughout this entire book, because since he was raised as a mundane by Johnny Rook, he never knew that he was actually a Shadowhunter, but he still has knowledge of the world of Shadowhunters and Downworlders, but he's also still human, so he still has all of those experiences, and he knows pop culture references and knows about medicine and all of these things that Shadowhunters are completely unaware of. So he just comes into this world and he's so annoyed by all these stupid hot people, as he calls them. I absolutely love the part where he just makes this list of all the grievances that he has with the Shadowhunters. He says, stupid hot people won't let me go home and get my stuff. They won't tell me anything about what it would mean to actually become a Shadowhunter, would I have to go somewhere and train, and they won't tell me how long I can stay here, except as long as you need to. Don't I have to go to school eventually? Some kind of school? They don't talk about the cold peace or how it sucks. They won't let me eat cookies. They don't seem to understand what autism is, or mental illness, or therapy, or medical treatment. Do they believe in things like chemotherapy? What if I get cancer? I probably won't get cancer, but if I did, I just loved reading that part, because honestly, this is how I feel about the Shadowhunters most of the time. They're just so unaware of so many things that are just basic and common to us, and it's just so great to see someone who was raised as a mundane go into that world, yet still be aware of their world, and very much aware of the human world and the down world. It's just such a great combination, and it's hysterical. And of course, we can't talk about Kit without talking about Ty, who is my other pure precious cinnamon roll that I love so much. And Kitty is so good, and I ship it so hard. Like, someone please tell me, why would I care about Julian and Emma when I have Kit and Ty in this book? They are the most precious and the cutest couple I have ever seen, and I cannot wait for them to get together. If that doesn't happen, I will actually like file a complaint, because that would just be unacceptable, but I believe that it's going to happen. Like, there's no way. There's so much flirting in this book, and it's the cutest flirting I've ever seen. These two dumb little boys who don't know what they're doing at all, but they just know that they like have feelings for each other because it's so clear, and they don't really know how to communicate that, but it's the best, and I'm here for it. Every single chapter from Kit's perspective, he calls Ty beautiful at one point or another. Like, without fail, he constantly talks about how beautiful and just amazing he thinks Ty looks, and I'm like, same. Ty is beautiful. I also love him, Kit. I totally get you. The other thing which I absolutely loved was when Kit and Julian, I believe, are in the car together, and Julian says something about Ty being a bit weird, and then Kit's like, Ty isn't weird, he's autistic. And Julian is just completely confused by this because he doesn't know what autism is, because Shadowhunters just don't understand mundane medicine or how to diagnose anything, because they're just like completely out of it. The longing looks that the two of them have between each other, the conversations that they have, that moment where Kit hugs Ty and my heart actually melted. There are just so many beautiful, beautiful scenes between the two of them, and I cannot wait for their relationship to be developed even more, because it's just going to be so good and so perfect, and I cannot wait. So the next few characters that we need to talk about, because I haven't talked about them yet, are Mark, Kieran and Christina. Let me just say, I want the three of them together so badly. I'm telling you, every single like relationship in this book is a relationship that I absolutely ship, except for Julian and Emma. And the fact that they're like the main relationship in this story and like the central characters is honestly frustrating to me because I don't care about them almost at all. And I love every other character. So I just want to read about everyone else and I can forget about them. And Mark, Christina, and Kieran are no exception. They're perfect. So in Lady Midnight, I shipped Mark and Kieran hardcore. I wanted the two of them together because I thought that they were perfect together. They had so much chemistry and there was just so much angst behind their relationship. I know earlier I was complaining about the angst with Julian and Emma, but there's something about their angst that's just different and I really like it. But then at the end of that book where he betrays Mark and then the whole whipping scene happens and it's just devastating and you're mad at Kieran because how could he do this? It's really, really heartbreaking, but I still really love them and I wanted to know how it was going to be explored in this book. So then when they go to Ferry and they find Kieran there and they're trying to rescue him and then they realize that he doesn't have his memories anymore, but then they save him, but then Mark is lying to him and he's not really comfortable about it because they want him to testify and all of this stuff is going on and it's just so tense and there's so much between the two of them that they can't really talk about, partially because Mark is lying to him and partially because Kieran doesn't remember anything. But then we have Christina in this entire mix because her relationship with Mark is also sort of developing, but then her relationship with Kieran also kind of starts developing. And I'm like, this is like the best love triangle I have ever seen in my entire life because the three of them might actually just end up all three together and that's all I could ask for. That scene in the ballroom where Mark and Christina are dancing and then Kieran comes in and he's like, no, wait, let me just show you how it's actually done. And then he starts dancing with Christina was just so cute and I loved it. And then when Kieran finally gets his memories back and he's just devastated because he finds out that Mark's been lying to him this entire time and also because he did something so terrible to Mark, he feels just so upset and so heartbroken and he doesn't know how to deal with it. And then Christina goes to him and starts talking to him and they're all communicating and they're having such like honest conversations with one another, talking about the fact that like their love was a very desperate sort of love and they need to know if they can still love each other in a different situation. And then Mark tells Kieran that he loves Christina, but he loves Kieran differently than the way he loves Christina because he loves Kieran for Kieran and Christina for Christina. And I just like, I was feeling everything. And then we have Christina, who is just so good at heart. Like she knows who she is and what she wants, and she doesn't put up with people messing with her. Like with everything that happens with Diego and Zara coming in, which is someone we will talk about in a little bit because I've got a lot to say about that bitch. But she gets out of that so quickly because she knows that she doesn't deserve to be treated like crap, and that's how he's treated her time and time again, even if he had justifiable reasons for what he did at the time. And she doesn't want to hurt Mark by being with him when she still kind of had feelings for Diego, and she doesn't want to hurt Kieran by being with Mark because she knows that their relationship is so important, and she's just such a good person, and I absolutely adore her for that. So yeah, I really need the three of them to get together in that last book because they're just so perfect and their dynamic is just so much fun to read about because the three of them have such different personalities that they mesh so perfectly together. So now we're nearing like the end of the book and there are just like a few more things I need to touch on before we get into like the actual end where everything is just terrible and I am just sobbing and dying. First, we need to talk about Magnus and Alec in this book, and Raphael and Max. If you know anything about me and my love for this series, you will know that I love Magnus Bane with every fiber of my soul, and I absolutely adore Malik. They are by far my favorite couple from the original series. I honestly don't really care about anybody else but them. And Magnus Bane is probably my favorite character in all of the Mortal Instruments and Infernal Devices books. He's just so dynamic and well written and well developed, and I love him so much. And so seeing him and Alec in this book was just a joy for me. Their relationship has come so far from what it used to be, and they've matured as people, and now they have their two sons. Seeing them interact with Raphael and Max is actually like the cutest thing in the entire world because they're just such cute parents, and I feel so much happiness. And then as we get towards the end of the book, this is when I need to talk about Zara again because we had one incredible scene that really, really needs to be discussed because I was in tears. That scene where Magnus has passed out, which again is something we'll talk about in a minute too, because I've got a lot to say about that. But he's passed out and Alec is trying to tend to him while they are supposed to be at the Clave meeting or the council meeting, whatever it is that's going on. And then Zara comes into this room because that girl has absolutely no boundaries and does not understand where she is not welcome. And then she has the audacity to say, wouldn't it be funny if he died before you? I mean, what with him being immortal? You must have thought it would go the other way. And then Alec responds in the best way possible that shows the biggest amount of character development I have ever seen in any of these books in this entire series, and it's so good. Alec says, "This is what I want and what I've chosen. Magnus never pretended, he never tried to fool me into thinking it would be easy, but choosing Magnus is one of the easiest things I've ever done." And then she says, "But if you die of old age and he lives forever," and he interrupts her, "then he'll be there for Max and that makes both of us happy. And I will be a uniquely lucky person because there will be someone who always remembers me, who will always love me. Magnus won't always mourn, but until the end of time, he will remember me and love me." I am in tears. That was just the most beautiful, heartwarming scene because it truly shows how much Alec has grown as a person. The entire plot of the second half of the Mortal Instrument series is just Alec trying to deal with the fact that Magnus is immortal and he's not, and he wants to become immortal because he wants to be with Magnus forever. And that's just been a point of contention in their relationship for so long. And to see him come to this point where now he's accepted that and he's accepted the way it is, and he knows that no matter what, he will always love Magnus and Magnus will always love him. Oh my god, it was so good. So yeah, that scene near the end definitely had me in tears. So I was like already crying as we were getting into the end of this book and all of like the tragedy that's about to happen. Before the scene when Magnus portals all of them into Idris and then he ends up passing out, like I said, I love Magnus so dearly, and the fact that he's suddenly like sick and no one knows what's wrong with him. We're left at the end of this book not knowing what's going on. We know that his powers are like depleting or something, but we don't know why and we don't know if he's going to be okay. Like, I need him to be okay for my own sanity. And then we move on to the actual council meeting that's going on where Annabelle is being like questioned by the Clave, which is something that's definitely traumatic for her since she was tortured by them in the past. And they're making her hold the mortal sword and answer questions to see if she is actually alive since she's like risen from the dead. And she's holding this sword and the stupid like cohort members are yelling things at her, and I'm pretty sure Zara is there being terrible as always. And she kind of panics and she ends up killing Robert Lightwood. Did not see that moment coming at all, and it just destroyed me. I didn't even mention earlier how Malcolm was actually still alive and then he kills Arthur and raises Annabelle and then Annabelle kills Malcolm, which was like a whole other thing that had me completely shocked. But then in this moment, she just takes the mortal sword and stabs Robert Lightwood and he's dead. And then they tell Alec and Alec is devastated and sobbing over his father's dead body and screaming, and my heart just couldn't take it. And then everything just starts turning into chaos. And then we get to the moment, the absolute worst of it all. She stabs Livy, our poor, precious Livy, and I broke down. If you've seen my Lady Midnight review, you might remember me mentioning the fact how in Lady Midnight, when they kidnapped Tavi, I thought it was gonna be like a Max 2.0 situation where they ended up killing him and I wasn't gonna be able to handle it. My heart sank because I thought it was gonna be like Max 2.0 and I was gonna start bawling. You cannot hurt the poor children. I've had enough of that in Cassie's books and I don't want any more of it. Well, I spoke too soon because apparently she did it again and she killed the poor innocent little Livy, and I am so upset. And I've seen countless people talking about the fact that Julian is just gonna be so broken over this and so devastated because he's sobbing over her body. And of course, that's absolutely true. And now it's gonna push him even further away. He's gonna be even more ruthless, I think. But to me, truly, the most devastating part of all of this is going to be for Ty. Livy is the one person who truly understood him. Being his twin made their bond completely different from his bond with any of his other siblings. And now he doesn't have her anymore. And I don't know what's going to happen, and I'm terrified, and it's just going to be a complete mess, and he's gonna be so broken, and I don't know what to do. It was just so many feelings and emotions. Like, I can't even cry about it now because there's just so many things that happened that I don't even think I fully processed all of it, but I'm just not prepared to see Ty go through all of this pain. And I know that Kit is gonna be there for him, but this isn't like what I wanted. I didn't want him to be there for him in this way in such a devastating time. It's gonna be so painful, but it's gonna be so good. So yeah, I think that just about covers the majority of my thoughts on Lord of Shadows. There are countless other things that I definitely forgot to mention in this video, but this is a 700-page book and so many things happened, so if I didn't mention something, it's because there were a lot of things to cover. But like I said, I thoroughly enjoyed this book. I had such a fun time reading it. I'm so excited for the rest of the books. I do not want to wait 2 years. It's going to be way too long, and it's not going to be a fun wait, but it gives me plenty of time to reread the rest of the series because as I was reading this, I noticed there are so many things that I don't remember because I read the original series so many years ago for the first time. So I have a lot of catching up to do. So those 2 years will definitely give me that time. Let me know in the comments down below any of your thoughts on Lord of Shadows. I would love to discuss it all with you. Do you have any theories? Do you have any answers to any of my questions? I just have so many things that I want to know, but we're not gonna find out for so long, and it's so frustrating. Also, let me know if you ship any of the same ships that I ship in this series because I very strongly love all of the couples in this book, and I am so excited to see the rest of them develop. But that is it for this video. If you would like to continue discussing anything about Lord of Shadows with me anywhere else on my social media, all of my links are in the description box as always. But thank you all so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!